Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have any action to take out of executive session tonight. That will conclude the regular portion of the meeting, but we are going to jump back into where we left off at our study session. I believe we are on slide 13, garage sales. Mr. Bonanno, welcome back. Thanks for staying.
Thank you. I thought we'd just start from the beginning again, just get everybody caught up. Is that okay? I forgot everything I said earlier.
Thoughts and opinions have changed.
I took notes. It's okay. Let's get where we left off. There you go. Garage sales was another topic that I was asked to talk a little bit on. Here are the basics on garage sales. Honestly, this is the entire law on garage sales, what you're staring at right now. You're limited to 2 a year. A lot of the requirements that you see are related to signage, which is probably why garage sales are found in the sign ordinance. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me personally. One of my plans for later this year is to move it to a more appropriate place. But if you're wondering why it's in the sign ordinance, that's probably why. So this is the entire section. Let me explain what code enforcement is doing now to enforce garage sale violations. You're allowed to have 2 garage sales per year, so obviously number 3 is officially when the law is broken. When we receive a complaint about a garage sale, obviously occurring on the weekend, now that code enforcement and animal services are paired together, we have an animal officer here on the clock on Saturdays and Sundays. So we have an animal officer investigate the garage sale, snap some pictures, get some evidence for us, and then they pass it back to the code officer that's in charge of that area. One of the frustrating points for the public on garage sales is, as I said, the law isn't broken yet until we've spotted it 3 times. So that's at least 3 weekends. And now if you put yourself in the place of a complainant, they've seen the garage sale 2 or 3 times. They've gotten frustrated, so they've called us, and now we're watching it 2 or 3 times. And in their mind, why isn't code enforcement doing anything? It's been 6 weeks. But again, we have to see it for that 3rd week before we can write up anybody or take any enforcement action. So I understand why that can be frustrating for folks that complain, but sometimes collecting evidence just takes time. So that's really it for garage sales. You have the law here, and I just explained how we're currently handling it. Mr. Roman asked to talk about this. He mentioned things like permits, and other cities do have permit processes for garage sales, so that's not unheard of. But if there's any specific questions I can answer, happy to do that. But that's how it stands today.
Mr. Roman, you can go first.
Thank you, Mayor. So part of the reason why I brought this up is, there was this garage sale going on. I think it was on Webb Chapel and Valwood, somewhere over there. And I one day just received a ton of complaints, and I was told that this particular home in the corner seems to have multiple garage sales a year. And someone actually was keeping track of, here are the dates. And so I was talking to John about it, and I said, well, how do we know that somebody has met the 2 garage sale per year limit? And there really isn't a way, because someone's not going to call us and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I live in this house, and I'm just letting you know that I'm going to have one of my 2 garage sales of the year. And so I've seen an ordinance when I lived in Garland where you would have to submit for a permit, and then that's how the city kept track that you were authorized to have a garage sale, and that you are meeting your 1 of 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, however many you're allotted a year. So that's how the conversation happened, and where we are now. And so I was hoping that we can maybe look into implementing some kind of process like a permit or something where people would have to apply for it in order to be able to have a garage sale.
Okay. Councilmember Driscoll?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm kind of processing this. I guess we've had garage sales here for decades, I'm guessing. And I just don't know if requiring permits is the best way to go forward. I don't know. I need to give this some time to think about it. I know some people have one, and I would think it's a minority, a small minority of people that are having 3 a year or whatever. I think most people have one when they're gonna move, or, you know, the kids are going to college and they go, why, we still got that stuff. Anyway, so, I'd like some more time to think about it.
Yeah. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. I would support a permitting process. You can't enforce these rules we even have today without it. You know, on Councilman Driscoll's comments about, you know, it's a small number or minority of people that have these more than 2 times a year, which makes it even tougher for animal control officers who are here on the weekends to spot these garage sales and report back, and for us to do some kind of tally. Before you know it, the year is over. And so I don't think we can have any kind of an ordinance about a maximum number of garage sales or setbacks from the curb or signs unless we have a permitting process, because as part of that permitting process, and I don't necessarily think it needs to cost a resident money, it's just a registration process, really. It gives us an opportunity to let them know, hey, here are the rules around having a garage sale, so that they do comply and they don't tick off neighbors, you know, by not complying, and they don't violate our rules. So I would strongly support a permitting / registration process in this case. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
I would be curious, what would the burden on staff be to process permits for garage sales? I mean, do we have any idea how many garage sales happen within the city? And then, you know, I know that we've got developers and you know, small business owners that complain about the permitting process and how long it takes. Are we just asking for an already taxed department to undergo some additional work to do this? I mean, it seems, I don't, and then you're hoping that you got an education component where people, you know, are aware that there is now a permitting process in order for them to, you know, sell the junk out of their garage on a Saturday morning. I don't know. It seems like a lot of work over something that may not be that big of an issue. How many complaints are you getting, Leo, on garage sales? Is it a big complaint?
Excuse me. No, I wouldn't say it is, but it is, like, I believe I'm aware of the one Mr. Roman is describing on the corner there. And if I'm remembering right, is that right, or was it on the corner of a street?
Yeah, it was on the corner, and while there were some complaints that went on the app, I received 13 complaints in a span of like 2 hours on a Saturday, and then previously the day before, I received like 5 or 6.
Yeah, sure. And so I think I don't think that we get a lot of complaints about garage sales. What seems to be is some garage sales go overboard. They have a lot out there. They start creating parking issues and view obstructions, you know, and being on the corner is especially bad because if you've got stuff stacked up, now people can't turn. And so being on the corner is a rough spot, especially on 2 busy roads, because now you're so visible. So I don't know if it's fair to say we get a lot of garage sale complaints. I would just say that when somebody goes overboard, it gets a lot of attention. But I mean, I can only remember off the top of my head 2 or 3 addresses that get chronic issues like the one Mr. Roman's describing. I don't recall ever seeing a complaint that so-and-so's having a garage sale this week. Like, I don't recall that personally. So it tends to be the folks that go overboard, in my opinion, in my observation.
Leo, I had a question for you.
Yes.
That 6th bullet says garage sales cannot be used as a business. And I think part of the complaints that you and I, or all of us maybe have gotten, I certainly did get my share that weekend, was that it wasn't just a garage sale, that it appeared to be more like a business, that they had merchandise they were selling, not getting rid of a sofa or something. Mm-hmm. How do you determine if something is, a garage sale is actually more like a business?
It depends. I guess it does depend on the nature of the items being sold, secondhand versus new items, kind of thing. Also, I mean, that is tough. When you go over your allotted number of garage sales, you're entering home occupation territory. And that's when it becomes, you're not running garage sales, you're selling things out of your home for money on a regular basis. That's a home occupation. That's not a garage sale anymore. So to answer your question, sir, the frequency of when it's happening, the duration that it's happening, is it all day, every day? Is it just on the weekends? The kind of stuff that they're selling, all of those are factors. One of the issues which I spoke to Mr. Roman about when we drove out together was that the city has no home occupation regulations at all. It says you can have a home occupation in this zoning district and not in this one. And these are all residential, obviously. So that's it. So part of my plan for Chapter 26 was to move garage sales there, where businesses and other things are located, all the home licensing and stuff is there, and then to also create home occupation regulations, which the city currently doesn't have. We have folks that, I mean, this is a good example, a garage sale to the extreme. We have someone who converted a residential home to a product showroom. And they're having customers come and go and parking on the street. I mean, they're using a house like a showroom. And you've blown way beyond garage sale into home occupation / CO violations. None of that's okay. It's not okay to run a car repair shop out of your home. It's not appropriate. Cars are leaking fluids and it's going down a storm drain. None of that's appropriate and none of it's covered. So my plan to deal with some of this was, when you cross a line, you've gone from garage sale to home occupations, but we need to get home occupation regulations on the books, and currently we don't have any. So that's one of the pickles we're in. So for right now, literally all I can do is count them as they happen, and then once they cross the line, in fact, technically I have to wait until the 4th one. The 3rd one, they get a notice. The 4th one, they get a citation. So it's just a waiting game and a counting game. And if 2 garage sales happen in December, then in January they reset. So you get a couple more. So yeah, the garage sale stuff's a little rough. It's a little tricky.
I'm assuming if we moved to a permit for garage sales, this could fall into the online category, and there's potentially a back-end tracking mechanism that says after 3 queries, this is no longer allowed, to generate a response of you can't have it, but then it's on the books, it's happening, and if someone calls in on a garage sale and there's no permit, kind of shut it down. Here's our resident permit expert, Miss Danny Summers.
So we used to have a garage sale permit.
Oh.
We did. I'm not exactly sure when it went away. It's been probably a couple of years. I don't think there was a fee to it, but basically it was a mechanism to track them. You were allowed your 2 a year or whatever it was. And so we would take it in and issue it. Code enforcement would take over with tracking it. And we used to have code officers that would work on a Saturday in a rotating shift, and a lot of that was to do with trying to get rid of signs in right-of-ways, the garage sale signs, all the other crazy signs that go in right-of-ways all the time, and managing the garage sale thing. And so we have done it. It was difficult tracking it, but that's the way it was done in the past.
Based on the new software that we have, would it technically be easier if they inputted it online? Like you could set it up. I'm 100% sure there's a way that we could say, if this address files for a third or fourth time within a 12-month calendar period, no permit denied. And if they still have the garage sale, you can go by and it's like, there's no permit, nor are you allowed to have one for another 4 months.
Yeah, in MyGov, we used to do special event permits, because we still do special event permits, but we used to do them in there the same kind of way. And MyGov, it was set up to where we wouldn't really issue a new permit. You could go in there and add a second date. Okay, this was their first date, this was their second date, if I remember right. Mind you, this was a couple years ago. To try, and then you could kind of see, you'd bring up the address and you could see, oh, they've already had 2 garage sales, you can't have another one, or whatever. I don't know if we can necessarily do that in EnerGov, but we can certainly work it out, try to figure it out. We'd have to do some research on if there's a way to flag us or something, or it just might be a staff moment where, okay, somebody's applying for a permit, we have to look it up. Or if they apply online, it goes online and then staff has to look at it before it's issued, is the way generally our permits work. So it'd have to be.
So we don't have any that have like automatic responses. Do you think that'd be beneficial on some? If there
Auto
was a
responses
mechanism to
to
do
the
it?
applicant or to staff?
For staff, or both, yeah.
So we have like a email type auto response thing that we can look into seeing if it can do something like that. It generally is used to notify an applicant of fees due or different things like that. We can look and see if there's a way to generate a specific permit for garage sales, and if there's a way to have it flag staff or send an email automatically whenever one's applied for it. It kind of, chances are they hopefully would see it anyways because it goes into a queue and then the permit techs have to issue them, but that could be maybe another flag or mechanism to let them know, hey, you need to make sure that they haven't had more than 2. And if they had 2, then you just deny it, and then it's up to code enforcement to make sure that they don't do it.
I just think with the permit, I mean, Councilmember Jackson brings up a good point of, it does give an opportunity, if you've applied for this, and here are all our rules and regulations and what we expect from your garage sale, so that it's not as much of an impact on people coming by or in the neighborhood that where you said there are issues. I mean, you're not gonna stop issues with parking.
Right.
But we wanna make sure that people have safe ability to turn onto streets and do other stuff, especially if it's in a corner, but letting people know, and then being able to track stuff. I love data. I love making things super easy for people, and not only on our side, on y'all's side as well. And so, I don't know, I would be.
I'm sorry.
Go
I didn't
ahead.
interrupt.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I would be in favor of looking at this and coming back with what does that look like on both the back and the front end, and what would this kind of look like? And I know you're trying to move it to 26. And so that, I mean, that's a whole different thing as well,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's more of, on this front end piece, what does the permit look like? What are our options to make it as seamless and easy as possible for everybody?
I can
And
tell you that when we used to do the permit, I think part of the reason why it went away is because maybe people don't know. I don't know how somehow you have to get the word out that, hey, this is required now, because I would say it was 50-50, maybe even less than that we would actually get permits on people doing garage sales. So,
well, it sounds like the first one might be free, because then it's a real opportunity to educate them on, you don't have a permit, like, and we're gonna put this one in.
Right.
So the next one's 2.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's just where I'm at on that, Councilmember
Yeah.
Jackson.
So I think our technology has changed since then. And to Council Member Williams's point, we want to, if we're going to implement something here, we need to try and minimize the burden on staff. So that causes me to think of perhaps some type of online registration. You know, we do that for example, the citizens comment form. Maybe it's something as simple as a citizens comment form type of operation. They go in, they fill out, you know, their date of garage sale and all that. Staff gets it, it goes in a folder, or they check to see that this is not the third one. I would say that relying on residents using the FBTX Connect app that have a problem with a garage sale would report a concern. We get a concern on that garage sale, and either if they've not applied or not notified us through the system, then that's an opportunity for someone to go out and say, hey, we understand you had a garage sale this weekend. You didn't apply for a registry or a permit or get a registration. Here are the rules. We're going to note this as your first garage sale this year. You can have one more before December 31. Conversely, if they've already had 2 garage sales and now somebody reports a concern they're having a third, then we can verify that on Monday, Tuesday, whatever. We've got the FBTX Connect concern. We've got the 2 applications or registrations from the other one, then we can go back and issue a citation. And that's just a start. Maybe we'll get technology to a point to where it's more automated. To your other point.
I'm sorry, I
No,
didn't mean to
go ahead.
interrupt, but I was gonna say our CSS portal can be made very simple on something like that, to where they can just go in there. I think a permit is gonna be the best way to track it. It's just gonna be a matter of figuring out the best way to keep staff engaged with how many, figuring out how to keep track of how many
Right.
times they do it. So it's just a matter of us looking at the system and trying to figure it out, to kind of keep everything in that CSS portal
Right.
for staff to manage and for applicants to be able to go to one place.
Good.
And I just quickly went to FBTX, InterGov and online permits, and you can search. So, I mean, there is a quick way to get there. And I truly believe on a back end, you could set an address limit to 3 to where it makes it super easy for y'all, like automatically denied within certain
We'd have
windows.
to see if we can do that on
Seems like it's a quick
specific-
program. I know, not on y'all's
Well,
end, but on the back end, a quick
Yeah,
program.
because you don't want to have a stop on that address. We'd have to see if we could specifically do it on a specific permit, because you don't want them to stop them. You've already applied for 2 permits, you can't apply for any more when they might want a remodel or something like
Oh,
that.
I was
So
thinking it
don't know
was
if-
just garage sales. Like,
Right.
when they click the
And
garage sale
that-
button, like,
That's
you only
the
get
tricky
2.
part. That would be the tricky part of figuring out if, it's probably gonna take an IT and maybe even a Tyler involvement to see if that's something that we can do, because I don't think we have ability to do that right now.
Gotcha.
But we will definitely look into it.
I think we can find the answer.
We will look into it.
Okay.
I will work with them.
Well, if y'all are fine with that, maybe
Yeah.
come back with what a potential solution looks like along those lines as it relates to garage sales.
Yes, sounds good, thank you.
Everyone good? Any other comments? Nope, shaking head, shaking, good, good. All right.
All right?
Moving on to shopping carts. Or tree stumps, I don't know what's next. Surprise me.
Well, our language again changed last year, again, meaning with everybody else, with every other topic, when 56 was updated. So the current law says that your tree stump needs to be cut down to a height of no higher than 6 inches off of grade. Or, of course, removing it completely is still an option. And another part of the code, which is not in your presentation, I said I would mention it anyway, though, is dead trees. Well, the original plan, my original plan, was to start earlier in the summer, let people know that we were coming, give them a chance to find contractors and whatnot, and then we would perform official inspections. This kind of work, especially dead tree removal, if the tree is still standing, can be costly. So a heads up that we're coming, a courtesy letter is what we call that. It's not official. It's just, hey, we're going to come and inspect your neighborhood, so here's what we'd like to see. That was how we planned on starting. Then several circumstances happened, the biggest one being the storm. And we started off, we actually drove the entire city. We surveyed the city for stumps and dead trees before the storm. It was in September or October of last year, I believe. And we had about 120 stumps and about 140 dead trees in the city at that time. So tack on whatever damage you may have seen during the storm, and those numbers have climbed a bit. So What was going to happen, unless someone directs me otherwise, is this plan here. In August now, is to send those courtesy letters letting folks know this law was enacted last year, here's what it requires, we're going to come to your neighborhood and check things out in 30 days. We suggest you start thinking about how you want to solve this problem. And it only goes to houses with stumps and trees, it doesn't go to everybody. Then, after that courtesy letter expires, we come back for the official inspection. And anyone who's in violation of the dead tree language or the stump language would get a notice of violation, just like someone who didn't cut their grass or left trash on their property. And then it follows the normal process that everything follows. Notice of violation, citation, the city contractor can fix this problem. So if it's not done, we would send the city contractor out to cut down and remove a tree, to cut down a stump if necessary. So the same process we use for grass, for example, would just kick in here as well. So my plan is to start that in August to try and get some of these things taken care of before the holidays. Once we get too close to the holidays, I prefer not to do these big ticket things. So that's the plan, unless someone wants to direct me otherwise.
Okay. Well, this is a hot button issue
I know.
for me. The original intent of council when we took a hard look at this a few years ago, and then when it was enacted, was that this would be a go-forward basis. We had an inventory of homes that had stumps prior to making that change. And the intent behind that was, these homes are on record, they got a stump, it is what it is. Going forward, you were 6 inches or less, or at the time it wasn't that. I know the task force moved it to that lower level, or I guess whatever it changed to that, but the intent was after that point, if you remove a tree, it is taken down to that level or before. I don't like retroactively
Sure.
penalizing people that have already done something, and it's gonna be costly to come out and make a small modification to
Sure.
meet this current standard. It's not grass that people are probably cutting it anyways. No one's going by and cutting down their tree every 2 weeks, you know? And so that's my intent behind it, was we had that information. We knew what those homes were. They're on record of the time of when we made that change, and then going forward, every new house, like, you got a new tree stump, it's not this level, like, hey, you gotta take it down. This is the rules and regulations, and that's personally how I feel about it. That's, I think, how council felt about it back then, and whatever was lost in the interpretation from there to now, I just wanted to bring that up to see where council is now, but that was my intent. That's my recollection of what council did, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page going forward of the enforcement, that this is how it's potentially going to be going forward should council's desire be such. And so,
If I could jump in, the law on the tree stumps specifically says, when the new Chapter 56 was approved, it specifically says that tree stumps that existed before are not exempt. It specifically says that. There's no legal, generally speaking, there's no legal nonconformity when it comes to maintenance things. You know, you get legal nonconformity with structures and uses and permits. So it was specifically put in the law that was approved last year that no stumps would be exempt. I have not seen the registry that you're describing. I don't doubt that it exists, but I've never seen it. If things were going to go that way, the law would have to be adjusted to take that line out. Just FYI.
my bad, I missed that, I'll raise my hand.
Well, yeah, well, you know, but I remember it would be difficult to, and that's one of those things too, where, you know, you make a neighbor take down a stump, but he looks over here and my neighbor doesn't have to do it, but I do. That's what, you might end up in that rough, you know, between a rock and a hard place. You try to do something, you try to put somebody a break, but you end up paying for it with this person over here. So it might be difficult, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, the conversation came from, this is an aesthetic thing again. This is your opinion versus mine of whether you like a stump or not. For 73 years prior in the city history, there had never been a single issue of all these great concerns that everyone had about these stumps and, you know, the disarray and dilapidation that it's going to cause in our town. Like, it just never happened. You know, as far as I know, home values just have kept going up, so it's clearly not the stumps here that are the big issue. And one of the talking points that we had during that conversation was, all right, well then just pay to have those other three brought down into, or the 300, I think it was about the number of 300 homes, brought into compliance with everyone else. And if you want to see this go forward and be aesthetic and a standard that goes forward, like I said, I'm not here to penalize and make people that had did something within compliance now have to completely do something else. Because a lot of things are grandfathered in over time, and this is one of those things that, so I am not against changing the language to say, unless as of date, and I think we can go back and figure out where that map was, because we had a map with dots and staff went out and did a whole, you know.
I blissfully missed that entire thing. I hadn't been hired yet.
Yeah. Well before your time. But I know that it's out there and I know that it exists, and I just, before we start going through, and a whole bunch of people are probably gonna get upset about why they're getting a notice that they have to take their stump down another 4 inches, you know, I'm just trying to, from the intent of it. So with that, I'll, you know, let council kind of weigh in on what their thoughts are. Councilman Roman, your light's on.
Oh, I left it on from before. I think what you've put together under the current enforcement, I think is fine. I don't, you know, I don't really have a preference on the size, the height or whatever. I've only seen one in my district, and I mean, it's a little bit of an eyesore, and but I haven't really seen or heard anybody express too many concerns about it. So I'm a little bit indifferent at the moment. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Anyone else have any comments? Councilmember Driscoll?
Go ahead.
No, Jackson?
I don't have any concerns with the enforcement plan. You know, I think having stumps in the yard is unsightly. What about stumps, like if someone had a stump, and this is an actual scenario, I can't make this up. Somebody has a stump they've cut down to about 4 feet, and that was some years ago, and the thing has started to grow again. Like there's stuff coming out of the bottom. There's not the center stalk or the trunk of the tree that's growing up and it's going to become its old tree again. It's all this stuff that's coming out of the side. Is that a stump?
Yeah, it's still a stump. What'll happen is seeds and things will get inside a tree stump over time, and then they just sprout from there, but that's not actually part of the tree. It's a different plant. There's actually a word for it, which escapes me right now, but that's not the tree coming back to life, as it were. That tree is dead, and some other form of vegetation has just found its way in and is starting to grow, but it's still a dead tree. It's still a stump.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The concern that I have with stumps, and even leaving 6 inches of stump in the ground, is eventually that's going to rot. And in an older neighborhood like mine, there has been a history of termites, and there's a possibility of termites, and stumps attract that, you know. And so I don't have any problem with the enforcement plan going forward. As far as those that may have been grandfathered or not under the old plan, or the feelings of that, well, that's a difficult one. Because if we are telling one neighbor that they've got to cut their tree down to the ground, yet the one next door has a 4-foot monument with things growing out of it, and that's okay, it just doesn't make sense. And I think that more than anything, we need to try to make sense here.
Councilmember Williams or Driscoll?
Ladies first.
I can't believe we're talking about tree stumps again. I'm just gonna say it. I can't believe we're talking about tree stumps again. So, okay. Go. I agree with the mayor as far as I think it's difficult to to penalize someone for something that occurred before and now all of a sudden is not in compliance. At the same time, I think that that's trying to enforce a grandfathered rule is difficult as well. To be honest with you, I don't see it being that big of an issue. And so, you know, move forward with Leo. I'm going to defer to you on this because I don't want to talk about trees anymore. I want to talk about tree stumps anymore. It's a non-issue. And as far as the aesthetics of a tree stump, that's purely your opinion. That's not, some people like vegetation. Some people like stumps. You know, I think there's decorative porcelain tree stumps you can buy. I mean, I don't think it degrades an entire neighborhood because somebody left their tree stump 3 feet high. So the ordinance is already written, and I don't want to entertain rewriting this ordinance over again. And so the commission, the task force, we wrote it and we signed off on it. And Leo, I'll defer to you on its enforcement.
Finished, Tracy? Okay, yeah. Number one, I'd have to also say, I find it hard to imagine that we're dealing or talking about stumps again. As long as I've lived in this city, which is almost 20 years, I have yet to have one complaint about stumps or a stump. And I do know the mayor is correct, talking about a few years back with a different council, that a inventory was made of the city. I think there were roughly 300 stumps identified, and the feeling on the council then, as I recall, was that if we went forward with this, it was not to be retroactive. And again, I think the purpose of a lot of the things we do is education, and whether it's garage sales or whatever, explaining to people and going forward and not penalizing people. As has been said, I've seen stumps in Farmers Branch and other cities. People have decorated them, put plants and flowers and decorations, etc. And I think it gets into very subjective territory. And I think, again, the objective of the city is not to be an HOA. If someone wants to live in a gated community, live in a gated community. Someone wants to live in an apartment, live in an apartment. Someone wants to live in an HOA, they can choose to do that. But I don't think that's the purpose of the city. So.
If I can add, one of the reasons why this is happening, one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up is, and this is the case with every code, is that if it's on the books, we're going to enforce it, right? That's what I am paid for and my staff is paid for. And so it would be unethical to take a law that was put in place by elected officials and simply ignore it. My office is accused of that. And it's not true. Because I do things like this, because we enforce what's on the books, regardless of our personal opinions about it. Now, there are ways to better accommodate some of the things that you're talking about today. So I'm hearing mixed feelings. I know Mr. Merritt is not here either. Maybe this is a discussion for him as well. But if you like, we can. I appreciate Ms. Williams deferring to me. That means a lot to me. Dead trees that are still standing are a safety hazard. They do attract termites. They will fall over. They have fallen over in storms. After the storm, I saw several that landed on roofs. Dead trees have to go, if you want my honest and blunt opinion. If they're standing, they have to go. And since it's on the books, when it goes, cut your stump down to 6 inches, because that's on the books. We can do that now, if you like, and hold off on the stump, just the stump discussion until another time. You can put some kind of moratorium in place, so we will not enforce that section, but we will enforce the dead tree section. So we have some options here so that we can move forward, not with everything I've listed here, but with some things. But in my opinion, the dead tree situation does need to be addressed. That's just simply a hazard. So
100% agree with you on that, and that's post ordinance adoption, previous discussion,
Okay.
6 inches or less, like that, 100% fine with that. It was
Okay.
more of, when I recalled the conversation, and, you know, yeah, we're talking about it again, you know, Councilmember Williams, but this is probably 12 times for me. So, you know, 3 times it's frustrating. But it's just kind of, you know, that was my only thoughts is I remember that part of the conversation because we got into a heated argument about we're either going to pay to grind everyone's stumps because I don't know any safety concern issue between 6 inches and 4 feet. You still have leftover stump there that gets whatever people perceive it may get, you know, but I also have not heard very many complaints about them in my past, and I do believe that this is truly a subjective measure rather than an objective measure. So, I mean, I would be in support of dead trees, get them gone, get them in compliance with what we have on the books, but I would also entertain, find that map, let's figure out what it was, and then go from there. Or if council truly just says, just go forward, I can live with that too. I just felt it's an injustice to several hundred people that now have to pay to cut a tree down twice.
Sure, understood. And with, I mean, honestly, with the recent events of the past years, the folks that cut down those trees might not even be here anymore. So folks bought a house with a stump that they probably cared less about, and now they may be told that something needs to change, which happens in our world every day. But I understand completely what you're saying. Some of this stuff can get expensive. It's certainly a hassle for some people. So I'm totally aware of that. So again, whatever, the reason I brought it up is just to get some direction, however you want me to handle it.
Like I said, I'll lean on the group here tonight. I don't know that Merritt needs to be here. If there's an overwhelming majority of people to say, just go on with what it is, like, I'll live with that and move on.
Okay,
And we won't talk about it ever again during my time.
okay.
Other people can bring it back up. So, Driscoll.
If I may say, I would also concur wholeheartedly that dead trees is a different category and they need to be removed just for safety reasons. And with the recent storm we had at the beginning of June, I know a lot of live, healthy trees that came down in that storm also, in neighborhoods and throughout Rawhide Park. And yeah, and also to Councilman Jackson's remark earlier about the fairness issue, I understand that completely. But if you look at, you know, one example in the city are garage conversions. You know, I didn't live here in the 60s or 70s, but I guess that was kind of the rage because a lot of our housing, older housing stock, a lot of them were converted garages into family rooms or another bedroom or whatever. And at some point, that was probably discussed, and those are grandfathered in. And yeah, there's probably other examples of things being grandfathered in.
On that, that's a use word rather than a maintenance issue. I would say if we've spent a lot of time talking about stumps, and if it's, we have an ordinance on the books, and we did talk about taking an inventory and grandfathering those in, but that's not what was passed. So we've got this issue of, we have an ordinance that says, irregardless of when, and that puts our team in kind of a difficult spot. So the direction I think we may need, do you want us to keep stumps on the books? Or do you want to have us repeal that? Do you want to have a moratorium on it? And then, Counselor, what do we need from legally to have a moratorium?
Council could direct you as the chief executive officer of the city that for whatever time period, there will not be any cases filed. We'll come up with something.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yep. Important to point out, we do have, like you said, this law in the books. And your team can't enforce without having this list that perhaps was, the spirit of the council was a prospective law. So we definitely have a conflict that we need to address here.
But apparently there wasn't a grandfather provision in the tree stump ordinance.
There's not.
Not the one we have now, no.
Right.
No.
So
So we either have to change this
Right.
and then take inventory.
Well, I think we did a survey a while back.
The inventory has been taken.
Okay, well
Yeah.
then we need to get the inventory because Leo doesn't have it. He hasn't seen it.
Would we combine the old inventory with the one that my staff took a few months ago? Because that list is probably different. More trees came down over time. Some may have died or fallen over.
Well,
So the original list may grow.
I think the point was to identify the so-called pre-existing stumps that council may not have intended to have further action taken. So don't combine them yet.
Okay, okay.
And if I may add, I'm sure that list is available somewhere because that was done when Hugh Pender was here, I think in his last year when
Okay.
he was still here. But it's not that long ago.
Yeah, we had a dot matrix of where they were,
Okay.
so. And I would say my recommendation is quick moratorium on the stumps. Take care of the dead trees.
Okay. Okay.
Is everyone okay with that? Tracy, you good? Okay.
Okay. Shopping carts have definitely increased in annoyance lately. I'm sure most of you have noticed that they seem to be appearing more often than they used to for some reason. They're mainly popping up at bus stops and other walkable areas. Folks are walking from stores and unloading them and getting on the bus, and they're leaving their carts behind. I myself have picked up at least a dozen shopping carts, and I know that they can be very annoying. So here's how they're being handled again right now. It is illegal to store things in the right-of-way, which is where most of these are appearing. You can't put anything in the right-of-way. You don't control that. So anything you put in the right-of-way can just be taken without notice at all. So whenever we find a shopping cart in the right-of-way, we take it. We put it in the back of a truck, and we bring it back to City Hall, and it goes into a dumpster. And that's it. Now, code enforcement has partnered with the fire department because several, or at least the best example is Fire Station 2 is right across the street from a bus stop where a lot of these things are getting dumped. So Chief Latimer and I had a chat, and he offered very nicely to help. So the fire folks are keeping an eye across the street for shopping carts, and whenever they see one appear, they grab it and walk it back, just keep everybody calm, and then we pick it up from the fire station. Then Shane with solid waste, with solid waste, he has arranged that our solid waste people will check the dumpster by Fire Station 2 and out here in City Hall once a week. And any carts they see are just going right in the trash. So that's what's happening now. We have 3 departments keeping an eye on this as best we can, and we're yanking them off the street as fast as we can. I know that there has been some perhaps interest in maybe creating an ordinance of some kind to address this. Maybe that's come up. And I just want to make sure you all are all aware that the number one offender of this problem is the Walmart off 635, which is not in the city of Farmers Branch. So any legislation that you try to put in place won't apply to them. So it's kind of, beating a dead horse. It's not going to do any good in that respect. So that's how it's being handled now. 3 departments are doing the best they can. We have contacted both Walmarts. We have asked for their help. We have called one of them twice. We get some lip service about, sure, we'll help you. And then the carts sit there. So, and I won't let my staff deliver carts to stores because that's not what they're paid to do. So we'll throw out your stuff before we give it back to you. But that's it. That's the biggest place is the Walmart, and they're not a business in the city. So anything I can answer about that?
I have a question, just a question. If we're taking the carts, you said we're dumping them, or they go into the dumpster, are they going into our landfill? Are they being recycled? Because, that's, they're metal and plastic and wheels, so it's a resource, and I hate to see it go into a landfill
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Actually, Shane has arranged for them to be salvaged with other metal. So they're going into the big metal pile, and I guess the city gets a couple of pennies for it. But yeah, they're going in with all the other metal that the city salvages. So good question.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Have we tried to reach out to the city of Dallas, council members or anybody out there to see if they might be able to provide any kind of support or leverage?
No, haven't done that. Happy to give it a shot. Their code enforcement team is huge. So I'll have to try and find the appropriate person and maybe ask for some tips, or if they know somebody, I can certainly give it a shot. But as of today, no, that hasn't happened.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we certainly need to do something about it. When I saw this, I kind of put some feelers out and I asked people, you know, kind of what their take on it is, and the people on the east side of my district who drive this area a little bit more have mentioned that it can be an eyesore. And I understand that people have their, it's your own personal opinion, but I think it really makes the city look in really poor condition when people are driving from out of town and they're like, why are there shopping carts all over the place just left by dart stations and so forth? So I certainly support the endeavor to try and fix something and do something about it. I don't know what the solution is, but I suppose we'll count on you for that guidance.
Okay.
I think, it is tough. And yeah, I would agree. Walmart at Midway and 635 is quite the offender. Maybe there's a conversation to be had, as Councilmember Roman suggested, but we don't know where that's going to lead, because they're going to be like, well, if it's walking out of our city, what do you want us to do at this point? Even though I don't remember that bus stop being the issue that it is today, when it was even closer to that bus stop on our side of the fence only 4 years ago. When you talk about an ordinance, what does that look like? And I don't think you can't stop someone from like having a cart. But have we looked at, and I didn't dive into it, but Walmart Neighborhood Market, if I remember correctly, they have the thing in place where you can't take, they lock, they can't, Do we mandate that anyone that is going to have a cart in their business have such fence put in to where at least they're not coming from ours? And I know that you can break through it, and random ones get it, but at least it's some level of deterrent.
Right. Currently, there's no requirement for that.
That would be the only thing I could think of, because other than that, I don't know how else to shut it down, other than I'm glad to hear that when we grab the carts, they're not just going to the landfill. That they're being scrapped and broken down and could potentially used for something else. That makes me feel much better about it. But how do we get it under control? Because I drive down Valley View most days, and I'm sure you get my text as well, like what is happening here? And it's like, did we not pick that cart up? And it's like, no, it's just back every single day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we do get accused of that too. That cart's been there forever. No, ma'am, it's a different cart.
The other one's already
always
in the trash.
a different cart.
But I mean, I think that's where you're getting a lot of people seeing that and thinking like, well, what is a solution here that's gonna help that out? And we don't have the answer. That would have been the only thing that I could think of, that businesses that are coming in that have a cart, at least we can try to limit it from that standpoint within our city. Can't stop the outside of the city, because I think the biggest offense that used to happen was from the grocery store in Carrollton, close to Turner.
Yes.
They would come down Fike and be in the north side of the city. But okay, Councilmember Jackson.
I think personally we might be wasting our time with a code, an ordinance in Farmers Branch. There's only a handful of businesses that have shopping carts in Farmers Branch, and I would think as a city we have relationships that we can leverage there without imposing an ordinance. It's nice to see that there's not carts piled up at the bus stop across from our brand new fire station number 2 anymore, so thank you for your efforts there. But I agree with Councilman Driscoll, we certainly should be recycling them. They're also, this may not be code enforcement, but there are also a number of carts that I see that are in the creeks and that kind of, they make their way down there
Okay.
as well. And so perhaps that's an area that we can pay attention to. Generally, there's some issues there, but I don't think an ordinance is going to do us a lot of good. In fact, I wouldn't want to, I'm not in favor of the message that might communicate to our friendly business owners here in town.
Councilmember Williams, anything?
No, I mean, I don't think anyone is arguing that abandoned shopping carts are an aesthetic question as much as they are a trash question. And so, I appreciate you, Leo, for involving 3 different departments and trying to keep that under bay. I'm sorry that you guys are having to deal with that. I also don't see a real easy, good solution to it. So, I echo what Councilmember Driscoll said. I appreciate Shane being creative with not allowing that just to go in and take up space on landfills and it being used for scrap metal. So, I don't know. Sounds like a problem without a real easy solution.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, I'd just like to add, I agree with Councilman Jackson's opinion that I think it would be kind of an unenforceable thing. And just thinking back to your slide about garage sales, one of the things was they have to be more than 15 feet from a curb and a street and all that. Well, they never are. People put them out as close as they can to the street so people will see it and turn there. And so I think we can get lost in the minutia here, and we have to look at the practicality, what's workable, not just can we penalize or prohibit or whatever. And one final point, putting on my economist hat, yeah, I'm glad we're recycling the carts. I was afraid when you said they go in the dumpster, we're just adding them to the landfill, which is not smart. So I'm thankful we're doing that, but we all pay for that. And the stores have to then buy more carts, and every consumer has to pay more because of that. So, we can't solve every darn problem in the world. And if I can just add one more thing, I had some residents who saw this agenda and had a couple of conversations the last few days, and some of them just said, wow, we've got a $140 million budget. We've got redistricting. We're doing a city manager search. We've got comprehensive plan, et cetera. Could go on. They said, I can't believe you guys are talking about all these issues on code enforcement again. Because again, we had a committee and, you and your staff made a lot of changes. So just add that as, like I said, a citizen's comment I've had from a few people.
Glad we're recycling. Moving on.
Okay. The last topic was on easement access and maintenance. I'm very much aware that this became I'm sure this has been a vocal issue for a long time, but I became aware of it immediately when I joined Farmers Branch. And so what we have, of course, is we've got folks with an easement between their 2 properties that back up to each other. And the issue is when and how we can force folks to maintain those easements. I believe you all received a kind of memo from the city attorney on some of this. I just threw together this slide, just kind of water it down a bit for a layman like myself. But here's kind of the long and short of it is generally speaking, easements are private property. And so they come along with the same property rights that every other inch of private property comes with. Easements are, however, reserved for a specific purpose. And so the owner of the dirt is actually limited in what they can do on that space. So where we are having most of our problems is utility easements. And utility easements are reserved for a specific purpose. That's to let Encore install, or the city, install their facilities, their tools and equipment and their poles and things, and then access them when they need to. And most of this is documented in the legal documents that create easements at the beginning of their life. They're either platted or they're bought and sold by deed. So easements actually have rules. They have legal documents that explain who is allowed to use this and why. And in my 12 years of doing code enforcement, I have never seen a utility easement say anyone could walk on them except the utility company. That's why they exist. So what we currently do is code enforcement stays on the public right-of-way on the road, and we enforce as much as we can see from the road. Of course, some of these streets wind and bend, and when they wrap around a corner, we lose sight of the easements, and we've gone as far as we can. So, I mean, that's really it. I think that, I know that some of you were hoping for a more cut and dry answer. Oh yeah, you can go on easements if this or if that, but based on the letter you saw from the city attorney, it's a much more involved process than that. Easements involve lots of research. In fact, there are, a lot of people don't know, but there are private easements. The city doesn't have to be involved in easements at all. There are easements between two private property owners. They have an arrangement and, hey, do you mind if I do something, do this project, but I need to access it from your land? Yeah, sure, I'll give you an easement. It can be a totally private endeavor. It doesn't have to involve anyone government related. So the easements take all shapes and forms and purposes. And there's just not a simple answer for why isn't code enforcement walking on people's easements, or how do we do this? There's just not an answer for that. And I know that some of you may have been hoping for that, but there just isn't one. So that's my slide in a nutshell. Did you want to add anything?
No, Leo, I mean, that's a pretty fair description. As the memo indicates I sent out to you, it all depends what kind of easement is out there. So if what I've talked to Leo and Van about is targeting areas, and then we can figure out, looking at the deed records, what do we have? Utility easement, is it platted or dedicated by separate instrument? What rights do the easement owners have? And that determines whether or not we can go down it, patrol it, inspect it, maintain it, or cause the abutting property owners to maintain it. So, I mean, it's going to be an owner's task, but I think that they have a plan that maybe Leo's going to tell you about, or Ben is.
Yes, well, what I've been, there is a creative solution, perhaps on its way, thanks to Mr. Williamson and one of our reps at our regional rep, Keita Hobbs, who's super over at Encore, super lady, very helpful. I don't know all the details yet, and I'm hesitant to speak too much. I don't want to sound like I'm making promises that I can't keep later. But there may be a creative solution where the city and Encore work together to maintain Encore's easements, because these are all Encore's easements. So Mr. Williamson and Keita are chatting about that to see what can be done, but Ms. Hobbs was open to that, and there may be a solution on the way. So it might not involve my staff directly, but there may be a way to work together on this one. So that's where I plan to stop talking. I don't want to promise anything.
Ben Williamson, Assistant City Manager. I got to give credit where the idea came from, though. It was John Land. He put us down this path and got us in the right pathway to trying to figure out a solution here. What we wanted to bring you is a solution that made sense for the whole city, right? We know there's a challenge on Brandywine that we need to address, but we know this is bigger than one street. What's the right solution for the city? And the thing these easements all have in common is they all have electric lines sitting behind them. And so that's kind of the key of, okay, Encore, can we be partners in this? At 4:30 today, we had a phone call. They're very receptive to this. I believe we're on the right path to working this out, which will create the pathway that will allow the code enforcement officers, to the benefit of Encore, to make sure the easement's maintained by using our property maintenance code. And so it's a win-win for both organizations, and it's getting to that win-win. So we're going to be pleased to report back on this in the near future, but it sounds very promising. And at 4:30, Encore gave us permission to say, hey, this is a conversation we're looking forward to move forward. The next step is Leo's going to meet with Encore on these easements to kind of explain the relationship and the process and how the two organizations would work together. But that's just one of those collaborations where This would be insurmountable for just one division within the city of Farmers Branch. It's a lot of legwork, a lot of research, a lot of pieces fitting together. This is a blanket solution that could have immediate results in the near future for you all, for our residents. And so we're excited to keep this conversation going. And Leo, we're basically handing the baton to Leo, and we're going to get us there, so.
And I'm sorry I left you out. You're doing a great job too. So, sorry. I talked to him about this 3 times, so his name is in my head. But Mr. Land, of course, too, is helping us. So I believe that's the end of what I have for today.
Perfect.
Based on what you've given me. So is there anything else I can do?
Based on the comments from Mr. Williamson, I think, do we want to see where that conversation goes before we dive into this any further, or is there conversation or comments that people want to make regarding that issue right now?
No, I just was going to say that I'm in support of moving forward in that direction. I think this has been a pain point for particularly the Johanneses, but I know it's been a pain point for multiple people, particularly after the whole incident happened where there was the windstorm and caused delays in getting power restored. And I know that the Johanneses also have some concerns about it being aesthetically displeasing for those who can see what's going on in the alley. And so I appreciate everybody's efforts in trying to move this forward and find resolution. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I would hope that you can come up with something, innovative and workable solution. And if it's going to be kind of something with the city and Encore, and I know Ms. Hobbs, I hope it's not going to involve cost for the city, because as you said, they are basically utility or Encore easements. That's all I have.
All right. Councilor Williams, anything? No? All right. Well, with that, I will say good night to everyone. We will adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:35. If you have future agenda items, just email me.